Narrative of monarchs, generals and politicians. At the heart of it lay a belief in progress, both at home, where the journey was from feudalism to liberal democracy, and abroad, where the empire was seen as bringing civilization and enlightenment to the dark continents.
Some of the sources that you've got, this book here or that book there or somebody you've talked to, some of the sources will be of no use at all.
But since the 70s, children have been learning a radically different view of the past.
Instead of having a whole series of facts to be learned, what it actually means is that you start interrogating the historical record, asking questions about history, rather than just receiving the products of history, what historians have produced. I think that's the essential difference between the new and the old history. In questioning the historical record, we're not just concerned with the primary sources that remain to us today, we're also concerned with the secondary sources, and that means different interpretations of the past. And one interpretation of the past is that it's about great men, usually, some, mostly kings and some queens involved, and very little about ordinary people's day-to-day lives, social and economic history. And I think that pupils need to question why that is. Why is it that historians have taught and produced such history of great events and great people? Why is it that they haven't written about other things?
Certainly the questioning of the old history has been a long time coming. It is only since the war that British historians, many starting from a broadly Marxist perspective, began redefining history in terms of the lives of ordinary men and women. In this view of our past, sometimes called history from below, division is as interesting as continuity, the actions and beliefs of those who questioned the law as important as those who made it. So where the Baker view favours progress, new historians have emphasised struggle, and where Britain was once the centre of the world and of the syllabus, it's now only a part, and not such a great part at that.
There is British history which just concerns itself with what goes on in the geographical area known as Britain, which I think is too insular, because many of the developments that have happened in Britain are also linked with other parts of the world, such as the Caribbean and West Africa. When you look at the Industrial Revolution, much of the finance came from the profits made from slavery there. Equally, the profits that were made from the cotton manufacturing in Lancashire and the north of England, many of those profits were made in and from India, where the cloth was sold. Whatever questions that you're asking, I also tried to make a break between the old history by not studying things in a chronological way. I mean, the next thing to do, logically, I suppose, in a chronological terms, after the Normans, would be something to do with medieval Britain or the Middle Ages or something like that afterwards. But instead I cut across to West Africa to try and do a comparison between black civilizations at about 1000 AD to compare that the Norman civilizations in Britain. Studying black history and black people has been introduced into many curriculum, but unfortunately it's often seen in terms of Eurocentric eyes. So, for example, Africa is a place where Europeans took people from, then conquered, and then very gracefully managed to give their freedom to the peoples of Africa after decolonisation. What I want to do in 1000 AD is to look at black history in its own terms.
But the rise of new history, now fully integrated into the teaching and exam syllabuses, has not gone unchallenged. For many, it is its very diversity and breadth of approach which they fear most.
In new history, we've had a flight, essentially, from British history. In fact, at the moment, for GCSE, there are no syllabuses available which allow for the teaching of the history of the United Kingdom across the span of time. You're allowed to teach segments of history, and quite frankly, they have a very, I would say, very left-wing bias, because they concentrate on social deprivation, for example, on colonial guilt, and on class struggle, and on women's rights. Now, these are important things, but the balance seems to be wrong. One would not imagine, looking at British history syllabuses, that for the last 200 years, there have been a large number of conservative governments. One sees a great emphasis on, I would say, deprivation.
So strongly does Chris McGovern's department feel about the new history that last month it published an alternative GCSE syllabus, unambiguously titled The Making of the United Kingdom. It has received the endorsement of a formidable collection of academic historians. The signatories claim that the new history places undue emphasis on concepts and skills at the expense of knowledge and understanding of the past. And they insist that British history should aim at uncovering the way British society has been knit together.
would you agree with the words of Sir Keith Joseph when he said that history should emphasise, and I quote, the development of the shared values of British culture?
Indeed, I would. And in fact, when we wrote our new syllabus, we used this as a starting point. We had to determine exactly what we thought the shared values were of our society, and we came across basically an agreed idea that the shared values included such matters as parliamentary democracy, equality before the law, and toleration.
For too long, some people have written off our past and have tried to make us feel ashamed of what we have done. Well, I'm not ashamed of our history. Britain has given many great things to the world. That's been our civilizing mission. Our pride in our past gives us the confidence to stand tall in the world today.
Kenneth Baker's core curriculum could well take the McGovern syllabus for its model. If it does, the implications for history teaching will be profound.
I think that historians who are, shall we call them new historians, will have basically a choice. They will either have to leave the profession because what they're being told to do they know is against their philosophical and their practical feelings about the benefits of new history for their pupils, because that's what they're most concerned with. They'll either have to leave the profession or they will have to break the law, because if Mr. law, what has to be taught about Britain's past, then that's the choice, the stark choice facing many history teachers.